taking my transformer rated current times that 125, I get 751 point, we'll call that 76 amps. That's what I calculated there. Now this office transformer, this is our oddball. If you notice that 125%, it has a little 1 next to it. So if we read that note associated with that little 1 down there at the bottom of our table, it says where 125% of this current, meaning that 750 that I just calculated, does not correspond to a standard rating of a fuse or non-adjustable circuit breaker. So when it says a standard rating, meaning you can just walk into Home Depot and buy a 20 amp breaker, for example, that's a standard size. But it says a higher rating that does not exceed the next higher standard rating shall be permitted. So very similar wordage to our branch circuits from when we did our power circuits, right? So we can go up 1 size, but not 2. So this is where we would go back to table 240.6a, and we'd say, okay, the next size up from 750 is an 800 amp breaker. So in my example here, I would have a 800 amp trip. So again, this is a transformer feeder, not an MCC. So the reason we size up on a transformer is very similar to the reason why we sized up for a motor. So a transformer, y'all in transformers class, you should be able to answer all these questions, but a transformer, between its primary and secondary side, is there a physical connection? No, it's all based off of magnetism, right? You induce a current into the primary side, it goes through those windings, it produces lines of flux, those lines of flux cut into the secondary side and energize it, right, once you kind of close it in. So, it's based off of magnetism, just like your motors, right? You got a stator, a stationary part, and a rotor, a rotating part, and it is a magnet. Those are magnets chasing each other. That's what makes a motor turn. Well, what happens when you first turn on a motor? What happens to current?
It shoots up.
Shoots up. So what do we call that spike? Inrush current, right? So we got inrush current spikes all the way up, but then it comes down, right? It's just for a brief second we have that inrush current. So when you energize a transformer, something very similar happens. You have inrush current because it's based on magnetism, especially if you have a cold load pickup. But your transformer can draw a lot of current when you first energize it because, again, it has to generate that magnetic field on the primary side for it to then cut into the secondary side. And like I said, if you got load already connected on this side, well, now it's trying to bring all that load back on at the same time. So you can see an increase in current from a transformer. So that's why we size up on there. So the office feeder breaker size, that's an oddball one. You can set it up just like what we did the other ones, very similar to kind of like this. You just kind of modify your tables there a little bit, or your columns there a little bit, and show what that table just told us. 125% size up. But your office feeder, that's the oddball, because that's the only one we actually do size up on. Okay. Has anybody got any questions over the office feeder stuff?
I have a question. Again, this might not be a topic, but if on this one, for example, the office stuff, the distance is not a factor in the calculations, why is it included on the sheet?
It is going to be a factor for the wire size, not the breaker size. Yeah, this is more wire size up here. Very similar. You can erase the distances for the breaker size. You'll still have your load. Instead of times a growth factor, you'll say times
This voltage
table.
drop per minute has the distance factor in, right?
Right, so you can kind of get rid of that. You won't need CM, you won't need a wire size, but you will have to have a column like this. It's just not a growth factor, it's that table 450.3b percentage, and then you'll have a breaker size column. Does that kind of answer your question? Okay.
Wait, so when you are trying to get the distance, since it's the distance between the MVP and MCC, where is the MVP on your drawing? How do you like measure
we're getting there.
Okay.
Like I told y'all, that's gonna be the very last thing that we're gonna do here in just a few minutes, and I'm gonna show y'all how to get those. Yeah. Yeah. But everybody's good with the math portion of it. Okay, so that concludes all 14 calculations. So like I said, you should have 6 MCC wire sizes. You should have the 7th being the office feeder wire size. You'll have 6 MCC breaker pages, and then you'll have 1 main feeder for the office breaker page. So that should be a total of 14 calculations for this week. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about is the drawing. The drawing is pretty straightforward. Oops. But the drawing is going to be on our shop drawing. You'll probably actually start out this week by doing this drawing, or kind of half of this drawing. But first thing that I would do in your shop is I would turn off all the layers that we don't need. So like I would turn off all your lighting layers, I would turn off your machine, I would turn off the work zone, all your power circuit stuff, and all the receptacle stuff. So that is not a requirement for us to be looking at this moment in time on this drawing. We should have all that stuff already done. The only thing that should be on here, and I just kind of got one drawn in here, is your MCCs. That should really be the only thing on this drawing. So if you still got all those lines going across on your shop, now's a good time to delete those. Those were temporary lines that should have been deleted a long time ago. So go ahead and delete those lines. So you should have basically just an empty shop with only your MCCs sitting in there, just like how I have mine right here. So the first thing that we need to do is to install this main distribution panel. So kind of tying in what I told y'all earlier in the semester was along this substation wall, this is where our main distribution panel is going to sit. Now, there's not a, we're not going to draw our MDP to true size. It's not going to be to scale. So what I recommend, you don't have to do this, but a good size to draw your main distribution panel is 5 foot by 20 foot. That's usually a pretty decent size. You don't have to draw it to that dimension, but my thing is don't make it like the entire wall, and don't make it like itty bitty bitty. Like, draw it in at a comfortable size. It's not to scale. So to draw this in, we want to make sure that we're on this feeder line layer. So it's kind of a darker red, but feeder lines. So right here along the substation wall, I'm going to go out 5 foot, and then since I'm kind of doing this in the middle, I'm going to do up 10 foot, and I'll go down 10 foot to give me that 5 by 20. And we'll delete that. So, like I said, I think that's a comfortable size. It's not to scale, but it's a comfortable size. 5 foot by 20. The second thing is we got to label it. So you can type out, main distribution or even main feeder panel. You can type that out if you want. Or if you also want to, you can just abbreviate it to say main or MDP. That's fine too. But we got to put some text in here. So I'm going to probably spell mine out. So it should look something kind of like that. Yes, so all this should be on the feeder line layer. Not your receptacles, but feeder line. So, now that we got our MDP installed, now we're going to kind of draw, kind of like what some of my chicken scratch has been up here all day, but we're going to draw lines connecting from the panel to our MCCs. So you'll probably want to find out some equal spacing between all of this. So, like for example, you might want to have, like I said, some equal spacing in between all your lines. Kind of figure out the math on that. But we're just going to draw a line that goes straight from the panel to our MCC. So at this point, this is probably where you'll kind of get on drawing all your lines to your MCCs, because this is where we can now get our X and Y distance. So just like everything else in our project, we're going to use that DIST command, and we're going to click from the beginning of this line at the panel, and we're going to go to the line at the MCC. Just like before, it's going to give you the X and Y distances, just like before, round up. So like for example here, it says delta X 40 foot 9 7/8 of an inch. Just call that 41 foot. Same thing for the Y, 33 foot and 6 5/16, call that 34 foot. So that's where you're going to get your actual X and Y's. Again, I was just kind of making up stuff for today on our examples. But you'll get your X and Y. Again, that rise and fall is a standard 40 foot. So like I said, you'll probably get to this point, get your distances, you can do your calculations, and then you'll have a wire size. So once you have your wire size determined, you're going to come back in here and you're going to add some text along this line that we just drew. So, there we go. We'll say, main feeder 1, for example. And I think earlier on our example, we calculated a 3/0 wire. So we'll list that. Main feeder 1, labeling what wire, what feeder it is, and the wire size that we calculated. One thing I will say though is don't be scared to over label this wire. So like I would recommend you put one kind of on the vertical stretch, and then another one, on the horizontal stretch, and then another one on the vertical stretch. So like we could copy this text, maybe not quite that high. We could put it something kind of like that, but I wouldn't be scared of over labeling your wire. You're not going to over label it too much. So you should come back in with your wire size and labeling, hey, this is main feeder, whatever. This is the wire size that I calculated, but you should include it just like this. For the office transformer, of course, like I said, you're going to do that for all your MCCs. But for the office transformer, if you kind of notice up here in the top left, our feeder line legend, there's a symbol for the office transformer. So we can copy that. We can copy just the transformer. There we go. And use that. Now, the office transformer, in relativity to your shop, it needs to go somewhere down here in this bottom right-hand corner. I don't have a specific X, Y coordinate grid number or whatever, wherever this goes, but you need to put it down here somewhere in this bottom right-hand corner. Don't put it anywhere else. It needs to go down here in this bottom right-hand corner. I don't care where you put it, but it does need to go down here somewhere. So, for example, maybe I put mine right there. Again, there's not a specific spot. Just somewhere down there in that bottom right-hand corner. We're going to kind of draw somewhat what I've been hand drawing, but on the secondary side of that transformer, we're going to kind of draw a line going out. We're going to show it splitting, kind of crossing over here into the office, and then we're going to put some text on there. So we're going to label one of those lines, or one of the splits, I should say. It says, hey, this is going to our ORP. We're going to copy that text. We're going to paste it on the other line, and we're going to change that to say to our OLP, and then we're going to list out our information on the office transformer. So we'll put another text box here. and we'll say, hey, this is our office transformer. We'll list out its size. So in my example, 500 kVA. We'll want to list the voltages. So this is taking 480, 277, stepping it down to 208/120. And then we'll also indicate that it's a 3-phase transformer. So we'll kind of have some text there describing, get out of there. We'll kind of have some text there describing our transformer. And just like your MCCs, you'll have a feeder line that comes out, and it's going to come over here and it's going to feed this office transformer. Just like so. And so you'll have some text along there that says, hey, main feeder, whatever, you know, I came up with whatever, 1,000,000 cable or whatever it is that you came up with or what have you. But that's kind of how it should look, plus all your other MCCs.
Can you zoom into where the office transformer is real quick? Thank you.
Yep. So, to kind of look at some more completed examples of that, the two that we have in here, of course, the one hanging up on the wall, of course, this one's older. It's not as up to date, but it's still a good example. I like this one. He does have his MDP labeled there. It's kind of smaller, but he's got all equal spacing between his feeders. Looks good. He's got them drawn everywhere. Again, they did things a little bit different back in this day. This was 2 decades ago, so don't pay too much to it. But I do like on this one how he's got his main feeder stuff labeled horizontally. He says, hey, this is main feeder 4. Here's my wire size. And he's also got them labeled going vertically. Only thing I wish he would have done is put his wire size down here as well on his labeling. So not a bad example. And even the example back here, it's honestly not too bad. It's actually pretty good. This poor guy always talks so much smack on him. But a little bit more completed example. You know, he's got his distribution panel right here, his MDP, right here along the substation. Good. He's got equal spacing between all his feeders. That's good. He's got real good labeling on here. He says, hey, main feeder number whatever. Ironically, he also calculated 3/0 for his main feeder 1. Only thing I wish this guy would have done different was I wish he would have put some more labeling on there. So it's good to have that there. Maybe put it a couple of times down here, and then also on all your verticals. But like I said, don't be scared to over-label it. You're not going to over-label it any. But he does a pretty good job on his drawing. The only thing that's circled on here, I didn't put this on here, but whoever graded this, he circled his office transformer down here. He did put it in the correct spot. What they're just getting mad about is he didn't use large enough font because they were printing them out. But like on mine right there, I think I used a foot-sized font right there. So if you do that, you're fine. But he does got his office transformer in the right spot. If you got some decent eyesight, you can read this, but he does have good labeling. He says, hey, it's my office transformer. His transformer size, you know, he says, hey, it's a 3-phase Y. Here's my voltages. And then he also has a little split on there. It says to the ORP and to the OLP. So he does do a pretty good job. Like I said, the only critique I have on this drawing, this guy, is I wish he would have just put a little bit more labeling on there. But other than that, it's a pretty good example. So, has anybody got any questions over the drawing? No? Pretty straightforward. Okay, so that's the drawing. That's the only drawing that we got. You don't have to list the breakers or nothing on there. It's just the wire size. But that kind of concludes all of our main feeder stuff. So, like I said, you got the wire size, breaker size, and then this one little drawing here. So, got a little bit of time. I'm just going to kind of pull up the schedule here. So, again, this is physically week 10 of the semester. We just covered week 9 material.